Hey everybody, hope you're having a nice Dead by Daylight. I know I sure am. And today I want to talk about the Survivor perk, Windows of Opportunity. This is going to be the start of our DBD 2022 mega mix, if you will, where we're going back throughout this year of Dead by Daylight and discussing some of the mechanics in depth and in detail. The other day ago I gave my overall opinion on DBD this past year and where I'd like to see it go in 2023. And I said in that video that I'd go in detail with some things, and that's what we're doing in this exact video. We're talking about a specific Survivor perk. But most importantly, this video was actually inspired, or spurred if you will, by another video on the YouTubes. That being a video by the content creator named Zoey, this video titled The Secret Meta, in which he goes over some of the most popular Survivor perks in the game currently, and talks about how he thinks they should be nerfed, changed, or altered in some way. And I'd like to say that I don't necessarily agree with a good bit of this video. I agree with some of it, but most importantly, I disagree with his take on Windows of Opportunity, and I wanted to give my take on the perk itself. Now, I wanted to say that this video is not meant to harbor any sort of animosity towards him, or send some kind of hate squad towards the guy. We're just two dudes discussing a shitty game on the internet, and more importantly, its shitty balance. So don't take it as anything more than that. Anyways, in the video, Choi states that Windows of Opportunity is the biggest problem in terms of perk balance for survivors. He says it's a big problem by a mile in comparison to other perks. Now, I think the bigger issue than Windows of Opportunity, I believe that Windows of Opportunity is merely just a catalyst for the fact that this game has bad map design. And I don't think that's a hot or spicy take by any means. People have been talking about the game's shitty map design for years upon years at this point. It's been a discussion pretty much ever since I've started playing Dead by Daylight, which was again back at the beginning of 2020, end of 2019. So it's always been a talking point. And I think Windows of Opportunity is merely a vehicle for that bad map design. If a player is running Windows of Opportunity, for those who are unaware of what the perk does, basically what it does is it reveals windows and pallets and breakable walls within 32 meters of the survivor. Many people believe that this is a problem as it allows survivors to essentially autopilot and not play the game, giving them information on one of their most important assets, that being windows and pallets. However, I don't think this is necessarily the case in terms of it being an autopilot. The player who's using it still needs to be a good player. Looping is a skill that is earned over time. The best survivors in this game have thousands upon thousands of hours alone in Survivor, and not only that, in looping. They know every trick in the book. They know how to play against every killer. They know everything they can do to extend chase for as long as possible. These are things that aren't learned overnight or by simply throwing on a perk. While it can give a player a better fighting chance as it can show them where some of these resources are, a player who is still perhaps new to the game or isn't as experienced in looping is still going to be just that. They aren't going to play the tiles as well, they aren't going to play the tiles as tight, and versus an experienced killer or a killer who's better than them, they're going to lose chase somewhat quickly still. Maybe it might buy them a couple of more seconds, but nothing too major in my opinion. Nothing to the point of essentially autopiloting them into being a godly survivor. Just because you put on the perk, the game doesn't suddenly have an AI take over for you that perfectly loops for you. Not only that, but good survivors still know where all the tile locations are. In fact, good survivors, really good survivors that is, sometimes won't even run this perk for that reason. I remember for a long time, Windows of Opportunity was looked at in this light. It was a baby perk. It was a training wheel perk, if you will, and it still is to some extent. Many players would say that it wasn't worth putting on this perk, as if you learn the map design, you could essentially save yourself a perk slot. And in many ways, I still feel that way about the perk in its current state, as guess what? The mechanics of the perk haven't really changed all that much. It's become slightly better, with a buff that we'll discuss in a second, but Otherwise, it's still the same windows of opportunity that it's always been since release. And if you understand the design of the maps and the layout of the maps and where pallet spawns are possible and what tiles can spawn where, you're going to be able to loot perfectly fine without this perk being equipped to you. But why did the perk get so popular all of a sudden? If you haven't noticed, the perk is particularly popular, especially since the big meta shakeup that happened a couple of months back. Essentially skyrocketed to the second most used perk by survivors if Nightlight's stats are to be listened to. I believe it says that on Nightlight. Yes, it says it's the second most used survivor perk. So maybe give or take a position or two. Definitely probably in the top 5, but it's one of the most used perks in the game since that big meta shakeup. But why? Why was that all of a sudden the case? Because if you don't know, Windows of Opportunity got a buff. Not back in that meta shakeup, no. It got a buff over a year ago, actually. For those who don't know, before the current Windows of Opportunity, the perk used to have a cooldown and a lower range. It used to only have a range of 20 meters, I believe. Yep, 20 meters. And a cooldown of 20 seconds. Every time you'd vault a window or drop a pallet, the aura would essentially disappear for 20 seconds. And all the way back in October, with patch 5.3.0, Behavior buffed this perk up to being 32 meters at max rank, as well as no longer having its cooldown, essentially being consistent aura reading. And I think this change was somewhat swept under the rug by many players. Or was swept under the rug, not by players, but was simply swept under the rug due to the circumstances it released in. In that same patch, we got a new survivor, that being Michaela Reed, one of the most popular survivors being released in recent memory. That came also with a brand new perk for survivors, that being boon perks. And I don't know if you remember how controversial boon perks were when they first came out? Circle of Healing especially was on the chopping block immediately for many players. Not only that, it came with the Trapper base kit and add-on buffs, as well as many other changes to add-ons. This was a huge patch for a lot of different things, and Windows of Opportunity was one of the perks that would see a buff in this patch. Because of all the other stuff that was happening, it really wouldn't be appreciated by many players outside of the players that were already using the perk. I myself being one of them, as I was using the perk and still do use the perk on occasion. So why has it gotten popular all of a sudden with the big meta shakeup? And I think there's a big reason for this. Many of players' favorite perks, particularly perks that would help with solo queue, most importantly, would end up getting changed in the meta shakeup, some of them being nerfed hard enough for players to not want to use them anymore. Windows of Opportunity is used by many solo queue players as simply a means to understand where their teammates are utilizing resources. If one of your teammates is out there dropping pallets on the fly everywhere, it's nice to know where those resources are being used to give you a better fighting chance. Windows of Opportunity, all it really is, in my opinion, is still just a learning perk. The good survivors out there are going to know where the tile locations are from playing the game. They're going to know how to utilize these tile locations or utilize these tiles to the best of their ability. And Windows of Opportunity isn't really going to change that. All it does is it helps new players have a slightly more of a fighting chance when it comes to learning this game. There's already a lot of mechanics in this game for players to learn, and where pallet and window spawns are is another one on top of that. Windows of Opportunity helps out in that regards, and hell, I'd even go as far as to say that Windows of Opportunity should be a perk available to everyone in the game. In my opinion, you're not losing games over Windows of Opportunity. You're losing games over the bad map design. And Windows of Opportunity is simply facilitating that a little bit. It's not its fault. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Or in this case, don't hate the perk, hate the game's dogshit map designers. Anyways, that's my take on windows of opportunity and why I don't think it should get nerfed or changed in any means. Let me know what you think about the perk. Do you agree? Do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the video, remember to drop it a like and also subscribe to the channel, as it helps support me and encourages me to make new content. And until next time, I'll see you later.